And here we go.
Hey-o.
I bought a farm.
So me too.
Not recently.
Oh, same farm.
Same farm.
Yeah, we bought the same
farm, different day.
Same day.
Same day.
Same time.
Same day.
So, hey, we did buy a farm, and wherever you're coming to us from, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we appreciate you guys being here. Like, follow, subscribe, whatever's appropriate for the channel. If you click one of those, it'll give you a notification as to when we drop these. It's Tuesday. Actually, Thursdays.
Yeah, random Thursdays.
At any random
Thursday.
Thursday, you might find an I Bought a Farm, and this happens to be one of them if you're listening to this.
And maybe a beer if you're thirsty on Thursday as well.
Maybe a beer.
Maybe a beer. So,
if you've written us on Instagram DM or the website, we've seen those. There's a few backlog there. We're trying to get back to you as soon as we can. And here we go.
Here we go. Yeah, I like to think of the I Bought a Farms as just the random bonus episode.
Yeah.
You know, somebody else suddenly, boom, on a Thursday gets cocked upside the head, and here we are.
Going up on a Thursday.
Here we are.
Expect
So
the unexpected.
yeah, expect the unexpected. So it's June 20th. So if you're listening to this, I don't know, end of June.
It's so hot.
So
dude. Nick and
hot.
I just went and stuffed our faces with Chipotle and then drove Yoder back to the airport, and it's
hot.
100 degrees.
Yeah,
98.
It's dry here. Yeah.
Muggy. It is humid.
Yeah, I know. I've been waiting for pop-up storms to happen, and they just keep missing me. It's like
You did catch one in Ohio, right?
I got one in Ohio. Yeah, I got. It was good. I got half an inch. That was perfect.
That's all she needs.
That's all she needs.
That's all
She said she was satisfied.
She said it was great. She said it was good.
So I think that was good. But Kentucky, it's like it'll be beelining right for it, and then it's just like whoop, like right around. I'm like, what are you doing?
Huh. Some areas lay that way, just geographically, or the topography is it's just a high odds that it's gonna miss. My farm's, I don't know if it's just that's the complex that I have as I'm watching it. It just seems like I've had multiple 100%ers of an inch.
Just go.
They're just gone. Where'd they go?
This last streak here for us, getting their pop-ups, but I mean, I've had some intense rainstorms come in, and right before they just dissolve. They just
Sucks them back up.
fairy dust. Yeah, that's it. And I'm like, what happened? Meanwhile, whatever, 10 miles south of me got a quarter inch rain or an inch of rain.
Yeah, your corn's help, you need to kill me.
I'm sure it's hurting. I had good moisture. I had beans jump, but it's hurting now. But such is life.
Life of a farmer. Real farmer here.
Such as my wife's absolutely I've had the death stares for 4 days in a row.
Got your proof right here. Look at that tan.
Mine's just been like this. I'm like,
if you don't know, you do now. PIMP.
Pop-up storm. And she's like, just put the weather away. And I was like, I feel like I can will this one to the farm. And it's gone. It tends to be it. But no, good to be back. I don't know how many I Bought a Farms we've done so far in 24. Not a lot.
Two.
Yeah. So not a lot. Mainly because we haven't bought a farm in 2024.
Well, we got a lot of fun stuff happening on our farm in Illinois, which we'll get caught up with it here at some point, but not today.
No, we got a guest today.
Yep.
So we got Seth Vander back. Seth was he on an I Bought a Farm?
Yep.
Yep.
A couple of years ago, I think.
Yep. So Seth provided some really good advice around, investment into the properties and how to make income off of them and when it makes sense. And so, we're going to probably rehash some of that today and also talk about some of his latest ventures in partnership and stuff. And then something that I'm not familiar with. I don't know how familiar you are on the commodities market side of things, which truly is on the farming aspect of things.
Yeah, a really good insight into the commercial agricultural business, which we obviously, is not our realm.
No.
And nor will we ever claim for it to be. We farm, for deer almost exclusively, but it is really helpful from a deer interest, a deer perspective side of things to understand what farmers, have on their brains on a daily basis. So
and I think when we get into, especially this time of the year when we've got beans and corn growing, especially on farms that we're cash renting, or if you're leasing a property, the owner's cash renting, sometimes you think it's easy to ask for, hey, just leave that 1 acre standing for me. And then you get the number, the bill from the farmer to leave that, and you're like, holy shit, how's that? Well, it's a market. It's a thriving market, and a lot of that, there's a lot of costs that go into that. So just trying to understand that aspect of things in the commodity markets, I think will be pretty cool today. And let's bring in Seth. We got you, Seth?
Yep, I'm good. Can you hear me?
We got you, buddy.
Loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Clear.
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Well, cool, man. Well, unlike us, it sounds like you just had a thunderstorm and rain gracefully meet your presence out there.
We did, yes. Unfortunately, where we live, we're in a flood zone right now. So from tonight through Saturday morning, we're in a flood warning. So
wow, that's crazy, man. I saw. I guess I was talking to a couple people in Minnesota, maybe, and they were like, "Yeah, we've gotten like 20 inches of rain in like 2 weeks or something like that."
Yeah, we're in the same boat as that. Maybe not quite that much, but similar. Yeah.
Jeez.
Interesting. I think Texas has too. I was talking to Nick. He's like, we've been getting pounded.
They've got that big storm moving through
Hurricane.
right now. Yeah. And we're dry.
Oh, it's dry. Yeah, it's dry here if you heard our intro there, but we're making it. We'll stop complaining.
Yeah, sounds like Illinois is a little dry too. Like you guys furthest west area, so
Yeah.
or getting dry, I should say.
Yeah.
Similar to here.
We've caught a few pop-ups out there that I think have saved us a little bit, but definitely no all-day rain type things that we're due for here at some point.
Yeah, very much so.
So
Cool.
Well, cool, Seth. Well, man, we appreciate you coming back on. I know we had a really good conversation last time, and we had a pretty high response rate from that. And you know, it's anytime you start talking about land and acquisition and the ability to pay for land or how to get creative on things, I mean, people's ears are starting to burn. And you know, it's even if they can't do it in the current position they're in, I think a lot of people are striving to get to that spot where they can. And maybe it's not from where the three of us sit, which is, you know, trying to buy multiple properties and investment properties, but maybe they're trying to buy that one property that becomes, you know, their long-term, you know, secondary property, the long-term recreational property. But, you know, I think we talked about this briefly last time. You know, my mindset even on something like that is, you know, you want it to have some potential of income on it, right? Even if it is your long-term property, something you're going to hold forever. Like if there's a way to be able to make income off of that property, obviously it makes a lot of sense to have that ability as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, ideally, on the properties that I get, I like to have, to me, I like 50-50 ground, right? Where you can have 50% income, some sort of income off the ground, and you know, have 50% hunting. So, or you have some timber or, you know, some overgrown pasture or something like that. So I love the income side of things on my investment properties. Now, it's easier in Iowa than it is in Pennsylvania or where there's more timber ground. So
yeah. Well, I think what we run into a lot out here, and we weren't really as familiar to it until we got into Illinois, was, you know, when we talk about cash rent land out here, it's 50, 60, 75 bucks an acre, you know, and it's like, boy, even 100 acres, it's hard to make up, you know, a substantial amount of income to offset that. And then you go out to that area, like in our Illinois farm, and we're CRPing for over $300 an acre. And it's like, holy cow, like this is a whole different planet out here.
Yeah, I just enrolled some I had, what was it, 5 years of alfalfa in it. So that's the useful life of alfalfa, basically, before you have to burn it off and plant it into something else for a year or two before you can put in alfalfa again. Well, the guy that was cutting it for me really didn't want to do it anymore. He's a little too far away. So I just enrolled it into CRP, and I think we got 258 or something like that, 262 per acre on it. So, and you know, it pays a lot better than the alfalfa, but I liked having it because it was a built-in food plot, you know. So
yeah, and I think that's the creativity that, you know, we talk about a lot. I mean, even kind of in that early intro from Jared and I, you know, we talk about a lot of times if we're planting crops, it's for the exclusive purpose of deer and stuff, but you know, to figure out creative ways of potentially cash renting some of that and leaving some behind in the offset, like, you know, the numbers have to make sense, but there's often a lot of opportunity for that as well. Yeah, so just that creative type of mindset to help pay off, I think, is important. But, you know, I think one of the other things we wanted to talk about, Seth, was, you know, some of your new ventures here, you've got partnerships. And I know that's something that we, you know, Jared and I obviously have a partnership on our Illinois farm. But, you know, I've also talked to a lot of people of where, you know, that's a dirty term, you know, and it's not so much because it's the ability to actually buy with a partnership as much as the people dynamic that sometimes comes along with it.
People get burned. Yeah, partnerships fall apart.
Yeah, having partners is hard. It's, there's no easy way around it. It can be hard. It can be very, very rewarding as well, though. I know for when we got started buying land, there's no way we would have bought any of it without pooling our money together and getting into our first properties were, for me, it ended up being my accounting partner and I were the first, we owned our accounting practice together. We owned our building together at that time. So we took those assets that we owned together and like we talked about in the last video, we leveraged those into buying our first properties, and that was for down payment. And that was also to learn kind of the nuts and bolts of understanding land ownership, also the farming world better, getting our hands dirty on the farming side of things. So I wouldn't have been able to get started doing any of the land purchasing that I've done without having formed partnerships.
So I mean, one of the big questions I think people will have there, Seth, is like, for most of us, just scraping together, the potential 20% for a down payment is hard enough. In a partnership setting like that, and I guess we kind of did it here in Illinois, but I mean, you can still do partnerships and get a mortgage, correct?
That's correct. We did all of ours. We got mortgages in all of ours initially. And we did mortgages. We did their own separate mortgage for the land. We had a mortgage already in that situation, we had a mortgage for our commercial real estate building that our accounting practice was in. And then we had a separate mortgage for our land as well.
Gotcha.
So we did that. And that was our first partnership. We have another partnership that we have a farming entity where we farm some acres. We own a little bit of ground in there, but what ground we do own in there, we did get off revenues from our farming side of the business. So, and that is a different partnership actually. So actually I have 4 different partnerships I'm a partner in. Basically two of us own our partners in all of them, and 4 total partners. We all just kind of own different percentages in different partnerships. So it's kind of a conglomerated mess actually.
So your goals are land ownership for the sake of recreation and revenue via hunting and farming, whether you doing the farming or leasing some of it out.
Correct. Yep. So like our farming operation, one of the guys that's a partner in that is a farmer. He doesn't, we actually don't do any of the work. I guess we just custom farm it all. We started a little bit, we entertained the idea of just doing all the planting and everything, but we met a local farmer who was, just said, listen, if I'm going to do your combining and trucking and things for you, I just want to do everything. I want to do all your planting and the most amount of work he could do. So, so that aspect, we just farm in there. We own a little bit of ground in there, but then we pay like our other partnerships, a fair rent. So it ranges anywhere from $195 to $250 an acre. I mean, just kind of depends on the soil quality, kind of depends on what yields we're getting, just kind of historical data comes into play there a little bit more. So
cool.
So for a lot of those, when we talk about cash flow and properties, often like you've got this farming entity that's able to rent then off of your land ownership entity, which helps cash flow that business and that property.
That's correct. Yeah. So, in some years, our rent is guaranteed every year, so our risk is on the farming side, right? I mean, our risk is if we don't make money on the farming side, right? So, the first thing we do every year is just kind of run like an estimate, what are our break evens going to be on our crop production, right? We have fixed costs with our rents, so we know going into it. We have some variable costs with, depending on what nitrogen, depending if you're having P and K put down or on what crop cycle you're part of for this year. There's just a lot of different variables that are, you don't really know until you kind of get closer to the date. So, but once you figure that out, then we usually can budget in like, all right, we're going to have enough just to pay the bank back at least, and at least for our operating note on our farming side. So,
right.
For us, that's the biggest thing is we just want to make sure we always stay current. And if we make more money, great. But we know if we can turn a profit that we're going to actually, that's another year down the road that we paid the bank our loan payments and our other entities that we own the property in. So.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. So I think that's that's probably the hardest thing for people to figure out. And I don't know if it's just, fears of LLCs in some cases, like the complexity that people maybe have in their head, but
Well, it is complex. I mean, you're here, we're just kind of digging into it here with Seth. And I don't know how far down the road you want to go as far as like putting a piece of property together. Cause you guys own a big contiguous block. And it's each parcel or sections of parcels, it sounds like, are held in different manners kind of across the board in order to put this whole thing together. I mean, do you want to go into how you guys piece that whole thing together and the dynamics of the partnerships, or?
Yeah, we can. We own, as a group of us now, we own 1,054 acres in Iowa. Actually, we own, and then another that's contiguous. We own another 75 acres that's not connected to it. That's just ag land. But anyway, so yeah, we started 2018. Well, we started looking in 2014. We didn't buy any ground until 2018, I believe it was. We bought a 64 acres, which I think I talked about a lot on the last podcast I was on. And then within a year, we bought another 80 on top of that, and they were about 3 miles apart. So to get where we're going to our contiguous land, we ended up, this land was for sale. That was more ag land. We saw the land that we purchased now was for sale, and the markets had gone up. So then we just turned around and sold those, flipped those, did a 1031, and we bought, I guess it would have been, we turned those 135 acres into 296 acres on the initial. Then I bought 40 by myself because there was just a straight timber 40 piece. So, so that's kind of how we got into that neighborhood where our 1,054 acres is at. So,
okay. Seth, real quick before you keep going, so it took you 4 years to identify a piece of ground. I assume some of that was like kind of getting finances together, maybe even testing a partner to see, hey, are we gonna do this together, type of a thing, and then ultimately, what brought you to those pieces?
Yeah, so 2014, I forget if it's 14 or 15. I think somewhere 14, 15, or 16, we had land prices started going down a little bit, and they didn't go down much. They went like $400 or $500, maybe $600 an acre, and all the prices anything that was listed was all higher than that. And we were green behind the ear, and we were just trying to get everything for a steal. I mean, we had no idea what we were doing to begin with. I'm not going to lie. We just, we wanted a place to hunt, and we wanted, maybe some 12 acres to learn how to farm, and we didn't know what we were doing. So it just took us a really long time before, we just said, we just need to do this and buckle up and buy one. So that's eventually what we did.
Well, and I mean, obviously, like what not knowing it going into it, but what a dramatic change from looking and buying land in 2018 to what you then faced 2020 and 21, especially, with the onset of COVID, and then what ultimately led to land prices taking off.
Yeah. So in the meantime, that was one partnership did that. So I guess I'll just tell you the whole story here. That was one partnership. And that was me and my old accounting partner, basically, in our old practice together. Me and him did that together. So that one partnership was just me and him that owned that 296. Meanwhile, we started up another partnership with another guy. Me and my accounting partner and him basically started up another partnership because he wanted to own some land too. So we started up that partnership, and then we bought 99 acres, right, kind of where our contiguous property is now. We're probably 6 miles away from there. We bought that about right after we bought our first 135 acres or so. And then 3 years down the road, and we always we kick money in every year, right? So every year we always do a cash call, the same amount every year. You're kicking that in every year, and we're just going to work with that budget every year. So then when we did that, we could afford to buy another property, basically. So we did that. Then we ended up basically, so that was another 114 acres. So that we had 214 acres that we owned together in that separate partnership. It was not quite as good a quality of farming ground, so it probably had less value. So we ended up basically swapping that 214 for 160 acres that butted up to the south side of us. Mm-hmm. So we then had 160 plus our 296 plus my 40 that we had initially. So we did that within the first 2 or 3 years. And it worked out right because the prices, I mean, like you said, that was probably 2019, 2020, 2021, 2020. So that worked out pretty well. So
yeah.
Then we ended up, because when we did the 1031, we actually would have had leftover cash. So we did, I think we had a little bit of leftover cash, and we ended up paying tax on it because we couldn't do a full 1031. Mm-hmm. So we ended up then waiting like a year, and then I had talked to the neighbor immediately and said, well, if you're ever looking to sell, we'd be interested in buying it. So I think it was 2022, the summer of 22, we ended up buying that 164 acres there. So we added on 164 acres to it at that point. And then just in early 2023, we bought the remaining kind of chunk to finish it out, which is 270 acres, I think.
Wow.
So that's kind of the crux of the story. But and that was a separate entity as well. That was our farming entity that bought that one. So we had saved our profits. We had a couple of good years farming after a couple rough years starting. So we decided we're going to take the money and invest it in some ground. So that's what we did there. So,
and it's funny how it's like, I mean, Jeremy and I just were in that before last year, or at least I was, we're just kind of like watching things go around. And then we're going to jump in here. We're going to land ownership, and eventually we just had to buy one and get it started. And then as soon as you're in, it's just like, it just seems like things start moving so quickly. It's like you guys sat there for 4 years kind of pondering, and then in the next 4 years put together over 1,000 acres. It's like things can start to happen pretty quickly.
That's wild.
Yeah. Well, and I bought and sold a couple smaller farms on my own, just to, help make cash calls and I own 40 acres. And actually to finish off I think when I was on the last podcast, I was looking at buying 99 acres. That really actually was the 99 acres, a little sliver right out of the middle of this whole thing that no one wanted because it's just what I enrolled in CRP I was talking about. No one really wanted it. It's not good farmland. It's timber. I mean, it was pasture. So I bought that on my own. So and I had sold, 4 properties in the 2 years before that.
Wow.
I think. So.
Well, I mean, Seth, when you get into the partnership stuff, I would assume, you probably have certain things that are pretty important. One being like some sort of operating agreement that outlines, that partnership and membership interest in it, and cases of if a member wants out. Like that's to me where I think a lot of people listen to this start to think, man, there's a ton of moving parts here. Like how do I even start to look at that?
Yeah, so I mean, if you're going to own land with somebody, you don't have to be an LLC.
Okay,
you can do joint tenants in common. You can. So basically, what that is, you're going to own something jointly, and then if one of you were to die, you have to buy out your other partner. Basically, there's a ton of risk with that, though. I mean, if your partner goes crazy, or you're liable for anything that they do on that land, and vice versa. So if they get sued and they're going to come after that land, you could be forced to sell. So wouldn't be something I would do. But it can be done. I wouldn't do it. You can have just a general partnership. So what a general partnership basically is, you own it together. You might call it whatever you want. Whatever partnership, you would get a formal operating agreement put together, just how you're going to operate, the intent of the partnership, how you're going to operate, there aren't really any bylaws in those. So basically you're just running a shared bank account, shared loan, shared mortgages. It's just simpler. Have to file a tax return with that as well. You're going to have some liability insurance. It's a way you can go. A lot of ours, there's no risk protection from your partners with that either, you know. So same thing will go as if you're joint tenants. If you form a formal partnership, you're still going to have the liability risk of your partners, you know. So picking your partners in these things is a little bit like picking your spouse, you know. It's gotta be the right people, and you know, just don't have sex with them, I guess, you know.
Yeah. Your call.
Live your
I
own
guess
lifestyle.
if you want to, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
That would complicate
It
things.
would complicate
Yeah.
things. Could make it awkward.
We'll call it a family farm at that point.
I would say though that's super important though, like just having the right partners, right?
Mm-hmm.
You really have to trust them, and you really have to go in with the same mindset and the same agenda. Like for us, you know, a farming one, we don't care about deer hunting in the farming one, right? So it's more farm oriented. So one of our partners in there is a farmer, so he doesn't give two craps about deer hunting. He laughs at us about our deer hunting talk.
Yeah.
So like he finds that comical. Whereas our other one, my old business partner, he's just looking at it as an investment. He's not a hunter either, so he doesn't really care. And it took a while for me to make him understand the value of rec round, but he gets it now. Then my other partner that's in this, he is a hunter, and he hunts with me on the ground. And he owns, he's a partner in one of our LLCs. So, but having open communication and just setting out your goals for each partnership and just being open and upfront about it, I would say is the number one thing.
Yeah.
I probably, and if your partners are married, you know, I'd want to be fairly comfortable with their spouse and their situation. I just doing taxes for 20 years. I saw so many things sour, and a lot of it has to do with partners and their spouses. And there's just a lot can go wrong. Feelings can get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And then you end up, especially if it's a ground you want to keep, right? Then you're really adding stress into the situation, and you probably won't keep that ground. You know, at some point, if I don't know, things go bad, and when they go bad, you're going to have to sell the property. Let's put it that way.
How about, obviously, you hope that most of the people, like obviously Jared and I being in a partnership, but what about from like a financial side? Like, finances always make people squirrely and awkward, but obviously if you're going into a partnership, especially if you're going to have to pay mortgage and bring money to the table, like you've got to make sure that partner has the financial capabilities to be able to do that over, a course of time.
Correct. Yeah. So, yeah, like part of the hard conversations you have to have, you kind of want to, what I would suggest doing is when you first meet, and you're going to meet with the bank, so you're going to have to probably give your personal financial statement. You're going to have to give tax returns. You're going to have to give income statements. So once you do that, you're going to know if your partner or future partner or potential partner in this land is full of shit too, So if you're worried about that, you can pull out at that point, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's going to have to be done before the mortgage gets in place, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want to be on hook for that. So, there's a ton of risk there, though. Yeah. And if they lose, if someone loses their job,
yep.
Can they, like we have one of ours that we agree to kick in every year. Well, I mean, I switched careers. I don't make as much money as I did before, but I made sure before I did that, I had enough money saved up that
you can make that kick in.
I can make ends meet for like 3.5, 4 years without having to sell anything. Right. So, and if that push comes to shove at that time, I got to sell something, but that's okay. We'll worry about that then. So,
yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask, that I think the biggest thing is because, life happens is what if somebody needs out, life events happen, whether it's illness or job or whatever. Right. It's like, hey, like guys, the intention was for me to be in this thing, but I got to get out. I need to get out.
Yeah. So all of ours are LLCs, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't have to be an LLC. So the LLC really just protects against liability, right? So liability from your other assets. So you're protecting your personal wealth away from your LLC.
Yep.
So that's the main thing about LLC. The one thing I like about the LLC is it's pretty easily transferable.
Mm-hmm.
And you have articles of organization, right? So when you set up an LLC, you're going to file articles of organization in your state. That's going to be done by your attorney. You can have an accountant do it. Some will do it. I used to do cookie cutter ones. Anything hard, like anything that was more challenging, I would walk away from. But so you're going to have articles of organization. You're going to have an operating agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how you're going to operate. So, and that's simple, operate from, what's our intention of the business? We're here to own land and have other investments maybe. And then you're going to have like banking resolutions. What bank are you going to go at? Who can sign for the checks? Who can sign for loans? Do you have to have 2/3 or, more than majority? It's all going to be spelled out in there, whatever you decide when you set it up.
Got it.
So like if for ours, we all know each other pretty well. So, and it was easy for me. They're like, well, Seth, you can just do it. You have the capabilities of, just having the appropriate, just having legal software and scanners and everything around me. It just was easier than having someone else on the farm come back in town, or they didn't have some of the technology I guess I had in our accounting office. So
gotcha.
So, and then on the same side is, you're going to have someone wants out, right? So, you're going to have in your operating agreement, probably some stated, or upon death, if an accident happens too, but you're going to have some framework that you've drawn up that you're all agreed upon ahead of time. And I've seen those read a lot of different ways. Basically, usually what happens is I've seen a lot of different documents on how that can be handled, and everybody wants to handle them a little bit different, and you can tailor those a little bit. So I guess you just probably need to have open and communication up front on how you want to handle those things. But most of the partners are going to have a right of first refusal, right?
Yeah.
So I want out. I'm going to say, hey guys, I want out of this. You owe me X amount of dollars for my share. You have, a lot of times it's legal, right? So it's in your articles of organization. You have 60 days.
Yeah.
So I present it to you guys. You have 60 days to respond back and take me up on my offer and buy me out. If that's the case, then I have the right to, then we have the right to sell it basically. So, or you can split off. If it can be split off, you can make arrangements, but there's going to be a time frame that's 60 days is common where you can actually put that into the articles organization. And, that's just a starting point, right? So,
I mean, my big question there, and I think it's for a lot of different things. It's how's it valued? Is it a formal bank appraisal? Is it a market value from a realtor? How is that at that point in time, barring, nobody probably wants that to happen, but again, life event. And it's okay, cool. You own 1/3. How do you value that?
And also, who wants 1/3 or a half? If your partners say, no, we're not willing to buy you out for that price, you can't come to terms, which I imagine is what you always would try to do, is that to make sense to buy you out. Who's going to buy 1/3 of some into partners they don't know?
Yeah.
Right. Plus, yeah. So to answer the first part for Jeremy's question is, in ours, we have it set up as the person leaving always has to get an appraisal done.
Got it. Perfect.
And then the partnership or the LLC will also get an appraisal done by somebody else. And we have it set up where it's a blended average for us. So
okay, so that makes sense, because I think that's a hard one for people to fathom. Is and even then, if it's spelled out, that's how you have to have it, right? Because even if you leave it up to verbal at the end and you're like, okay, cool, we'll get an appraisal, and the appraisal comes in low, now you're in an argument over what the value is, even though you have an appraisal. If it's written out in that operating agreement, there it is. It's black and white. This is how we all decided to do it when we got together.
Yeah. And that was part of the things, we had a unique look into it behind the scenes of doing, seeing different LLCs and everything, and not even relating to farmland, just plumbing businesses, electrical businesses, trucking businesses, you name it, just watching these things fall, when people are going through harder times in life via maybe divorce or whatever it is. And just watching partnerships erode, and I don't know. I guess we had a unique situation for us. We knew what to look for and how to set it up for our own benefit. That being said, what happens if one wants to get out? I mean, you're going to have to basically sell the ground, because no one's going to want to buy a 1/3 interest with, you guys aren't going to want to buy a 1/3 interest with my partners,
Yeah,
maybe you will.
You said Iowa, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think what's interesting about that, when you get into that, that stance, I guess, so when we look at that, like, okay, I want to get out of something, you own that, or you are a member of that LLC, correct?
That's good. Yep.
Versus like, with ours, it's, my LLC has half, your LLC has half. Are you in that LLC as another LLC? I'm trying not to confuse people, or as Seth?
I am in. I don't make things easy in my life, so.
Well, you were a tax guy, so you understand it.
Yeah, so I own most of them are just myself.
Okay.
I have a personal LLC that I am owners in one of them in. So.
Okay, got it. Yeah,
but
and I mean,
the other ones, I'm just me, and I'm a member. Yes.
Is there? I mean, I think for Jared and I, we kind of had those businesses set up, but like, is there a benefit to doing it, like two individuals coming together for an LLC to buy a property versus LLCs coming together to buy a property?
Potentially on the banking side of things. If that LLC that you're bringing to the table doesn't have a lot of net worth or income, the bank may balk at that. So I would say the biggest thing for there would just be on the banking side, bringing yourself to the table, because your LLC is not going to allow you to personally guarantee it at the bank, right?
Yeah.
So the bank always wants you to sign that personal guarantee. When you're an LLC, there's no guarantee on that, right? So
gotcha.
They're going to want you to own it. Usually, I'm going to say this very generically now, they want you to do it personally. Just be your personhood, sign it, so you can do the I just blanked there. Personal guarantee. Sorry.
Yeah. So they want to be able to lean it against your personal wealth.
That's correct. Yes.
Yep. And they can do that through an LLC, right? That's
as a guarantor, I guess.
Right. So that's what we did, Seth. So we both started LLCs. Jeremy had one in existence.
Yep.
And potentially that's why we didn't have an issue, because your LLC was worth something at that point.
Yeah, mine was making money and it had other assets under it.
So I started a new LLC. This is for this Illinois farm we bought. And then we came together and bought it. Basically we own it in conjunction. Those two LLCs do. Jeremy and I are both the sole owners of those LLCs.
But we had to personally guarantee that mortgage on behalf of each.
Yeah. And we didn't really consult anybody going into that. I think
no.
We don't even have an operating agreement
we do.
Tied to the property, or just for our LLCs individually?
Tied to the property.
We do?
Yep.
We
had to do one. I get it all.
So I signed it at some point. That's how that works.
Jeremy owns 100%. No,
Jeremy wins.
Yeah. No, we had to do one for the bank wanted one.
Okay.
Yep, on it.
Gotcha.
It's pretty simple. That's why I was asking some of the questions of like who gets out on death, buyout from the business partners.
Well, dude, it's a very valid conversation. I mean, it's a doom and gloom conversation. Almost anybody that you even mention partnerships to that have been in business are like, ugh, like be careful. Yeah. That's what they always say. Yeah. And I'm like, boy, I hear you. I absolutely agree. And it is, to the level of a marriage, it's almost just as important.
Yeah. And social conflict. It's everywhere. You never know what's going to happen, or it might not even be the two business partners. It could be, outside effects that happen. Could be the business partners.
Things happen.
Wife leaves them, and now there's a divorce, and now there's alimony. There's all kinds of things out of control that just, they happen. But when you're
at the same time though, like, and just like Seth's situation is like, at least we could not have afforded the property that we bought individually.
No. Yeah.
So
huge advantage of the partner.
Yeah. So you kind of put differences aside for a common goal, and it certainly helps if you have a friendship and your lives are aligned in a way that you're gonna make it work no matter what.
So I guess my question there, Seth, is like, okay, you guys successful partnership, like even say early in some of these properties, if you're doing things right and you're buying in the right places or for the right prices, you're building equity. How about from a leveraging that equity to continue to buy other properties? Is that like an LLC vote, right? Because there's multiple of you, or is that laid out in the agreement as well?
No. Technically, you're supposed to have, ours is supposed to be an LLC vote, and we probably do it after the fact. I hate to say that, but we do.
Yeah.
It usually is, hey, we can sell this and make good money, and that farm over there looks a little undervalued, and maybe we can kick some tires a little bit and see if we can get something going.
Yep.
And that's how it usually went, is like, I would just call a realtor and say, hey, can you sell our farm? Don't list it, but see if you had anyone out there wanting to buy it.
Yep.
And then said, we want to 1031 that farm. So if you get someone that wants to buy it, we would like to buy that one. And you be our buying agent on that as well. And that's how almost all of ours went. We didn't even list it. We just put it on the side, and we didn't make a vote on anything because we never knew if we were going to sell something or if we are going to buy something. So,
and I would assume in most cases for that, from a sell and buy standpoint, like were there situations where you guys had to bring further investments into the kiddie pool, or was because of the 1031s and stuff like that, you guys pretty much like the business was almost self-funding and continuing to buy that way?
So our LLCs that own all the land, yes, we've been, besides our initial investments, and then the one we continually put money in, and we'll never do anything that will always take care of itself. Otherwise, we're only putting X amount of dollars in that one a year.
Right.
And so if we're going to 1031 it has to meet our parameters for that cash contribution every year.
Got it.
Otherwise, we're not going to do it in that one. The other ones, we've been lucky enough to, our gains have been good enough to where we didn't actually have to kick in any more money. So, those have all been self-sustaining so far.
That's awesome.
Now, any purchases going forward would not be self-sustaining.
Just because of land prices?
Land prices are too high. We'd have to kick cash in again. And we're all kind of at the same point too. We're like, all right, well, let's just get some debt paid down. Let's just pay off, let's pay off as much debt as we can in the short term. But I think we have one more round that we'd like to buy one more property, maybe in each one. And then, by the time we get everything paid off, I'm going to have less hair and fatter than I already am. So,
well, so I guess that leads to the question for you and the other members, like, what is the long-term goal? Is it, to hold it to potentially not being, Debbie down, but like till you pass to where the basis resets for your kids and then they have an investment? Is it, hey, this is retirement. Like even with capital gains, like I'll sell it, pay the taxes, take the good cash benefit, and like there's my retirement. Like what? And maybe it varies for all of you guys. I don't know.
Yeah. So I think one of the entities is just a straight up retirement, right?
Okay.
So like at some point, when whatever that point's going to be, 60, 65, 70, 75, or probably 72, because you're going to have to start, probably want to have some things taken care of before you have to start drawing out of your R&Ds out of your retirement accounts.
Yep.
So I would say probably before that time, we'll sell whatever ground we own in there.
Gotcha.
So
and take the tax hit.
Take the tax hit. Yeah. Just.
Got it.
We kicked the can down the road long enough. We'll just buck up and pay it. And
well, and I mean, if things do what they're supposed to do, like that tax hit is overall minimal to where you started.
Correct.
Yep.
I mean, it's allowed us to grow so fast. So, I mean.
Okay.
Yeah. The other one, I would say our farming one, we haven't really had a talk about an end game yet because we don't really know what the end game is going to be on that one. We could run into 3-4 bad years of farming and we got to sell the farm just to keep liquid. Right.
Right.
So we don't really talk about, we haven't had that conversation because we don't have enough equity in it yet in the land, and we don't have enough. Yeah.
I mean, is there interest?
There's a lot of risk involved in that account. And so we're still risk on at this point. We could be risk off whenever we want, just by what I mean by that is we're at market risk, right? So
yeah,
you hammer some commodity prices down, and we're still having to pay higher inputs.
and you're in the red.
We're in the red. Even if we break even on our farming side and we have a land payment, right?
Yep.
That land payment has to be made, right?
Right. It's a guarantee.
So it's a guarantee, right? So
is there, I mean, for something like that, I know you guys own some land there, but obviously being a farming operation, I mean, is there interest in that neck of the woods for operations from other farming groups, or is it just because it's so like, well, if they stop, somebody's got to pick it up? Like, there's not, I guess it's like, am I really buying a book of business per se?
Yeah. So for us, no. I mean,
okay.
There's enough. So most guys would prefer to rent the ground.
Yep.
Own the ground, farm it themselves.
Yep.
Now, like our farmer, he had a bunch of really kind of junk acres, like probably pretty good deer hunting ground. I never asked where it was at or whatever. But
yeah, I love junk acres.
He was just tired of farming like some really rough acres. As hard as the equipment, he was pretty fed up with it. So when I approached him through a mutual friend, he was like, "Oh yeah, those acres are nicer acres," and he just made some purchases on his farming side. So he wanted to continue to have some income to keep his new equipment that he purchased going. So
got it. That makes sense.
So I guess there's always, it's hard to say. There's just, every situation is a little bit different. Custom farming is a common thing. It's not as common as cash renting, but it's still a common thing. But
yeah. Well, and I think it makes sense, obviously, in the situation where you guys have land ownership that you're essentially renting to, the custom farming operation, where most of these guys are renting from another landowner.
Correct. Yeah. And, I don't know if one way is better than the other. I know for the landowner, obviously you're going to want to probably get a cash rent or farm it yourself. Mm-hmm. It just depends on risk tolerance at that point, right?
Right. Does it make sense? Jared and I had a situation here recently where we had a chance to buy some tillable adjacent to us, and really we wanted like a 10-acre section of woods out of a 40-acre chunk. And so we had approached the neighbor who was a farmer about, essentially buying the 30 acres of tillable and probably getting a deal on it, and very little interest in it. And maybe some of it was his age and where he's farming at now, but is it, maybe we looked at it wrong. Like, if you pay let's say $10,000 an acre, it takes some time to make your money back on that investment, right? As a farmer.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's so hard because everybody's operations are different. Your equipment line's different. Your ground is different. So, I'd love to say there's a blanket answer for that, but there's just not. Everybody's operation is different. So, it's hard to say for sure.
Well, maybe when we get into some of this commodity talk, we'll help you kind of intro us and our listeners into some of that, because, that's a lot of foreign ground for us in terms of like, we look at it and say, okay, well, it's this, like, how much are you actually making, knowing that it's a commodity and prices are going to vary. But I think that's an important topic of interest on a lot of people's end, just because it is the actual business side of land that many of us are utilizing, but we don't necessarily have a hand in it because we're not farmers and we're not raising cattle or whatever it might be.
Okay. Yeah, we can talk about that whenever you want to.
So, I think that makes sense, for a kind of end game on some of these, because that's probably the biggest difference I think we hear from a lot of people is like, well, okay, Jared and Jeremy, like, what's your end game on the Illinois farm? And hell, we almost sold it this year, so it kind of gives that away. But, that maybe it sells next year. Maybe we keep it for 10 more years. Like, I don't necessarily know if we have a planned end game, but likely we'll use that property to leverage to buy more property would be the only thing I could say, whether it's a full 1031 or it's just leveraging the equity in that place. But I think for a lot of people, that side seems so far away, right? Like it's essentially find a property, somehow put together 20% down likely because you're not going to buy it in cash. And then it's like to even think about having equity to leverage to another one seems so far off. But in your case, and fortunately in mine, like when I bought in 2019, I paid fair market value for the property I bought in Kentucky. 2 years later, I had like $90,000 in gain on that property. I didn't do anything, right? It just, the market just changed that much to where all of a sudden, plus my down payment, I'm sitting on $150,000 in equity in a property that I didn't do anything with. Just bought it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked about in the last podcast, I had 80 acres that was phenomenal deer hunting, and that's going to be my baby that I was going to keep. And within 4 months of buying it, I sold it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
some guy offered me.
Yeah. What are you going to do? I mean, that's the crazy thing. So I want people, because I think even right now, I would say that probably overall people are kind of down in the dumps right now about, man, land's so expensive. Like there's no way I'm ever going to find it. Like, or be like we're just going to wait. And I don't think it's going to get any better.
Well, it's regional too. Like I think, we talked to some other guys in Iowa too that are land buyers and stuff. And it sounds like, per the legislation that's just happened here with closing the loopholes with non-residents, is that maybe your land prices out there for recreational ground, which may not be the farm ground, but your rec stuff has softened here, like maybe like 10% in the past couple of weeks.
Looks that way, yeah. From everything I've seen, I mean, I'm always looking for ground. If someone comes and offer to buy our 1,000 acres and they're going to pay us for it, I'm never going to say no.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're not looking to sell it, and we're not looking to sell it. But so I'm always looking though. If someone's going to bring us an offer that it's too good to be true, I'm going to sell it. Like,
sure. So
I'm always looking for new ground elsewhere, or whatever. So. I would say, I don't know if it's 10%, but it's definitely softened from what I've seen on, what's been listed has been the listing prices have softened. So, yeah.
Are you seeing more? I would expect that whether it's now or soon, like you start to see more inventory hitting the market as well from some of these non-residents.
I've just seen in the past week, I've seen probably 5 or 6 properties for sale from non-residents.
Wow.
So, I don't know what to think about that. I thought maybe there would be a run on it right away where it might drive the price up just for a little spike and then it would fall off. But I don't know, with interest rates being high, you're going to cut the people that were overpaying for everything were all the non-residents, right?
Exactly.
So you're going to cut them out and you're going to have higher interest rates. It's probably going to soften a little bit,
Well, it could give a big opportunity for residents like you, and we know Skip Sly's doing it too, like guys that are, looking to continue to build on to their portfolio in Iowa. I mean, there's an opportunity that might come up. Yeah. Plus, these guys are probably wanting to get out of these things pretty quick, maybe 1031 it into another state or something. So, the right cash offer could get you basically instant equity on a property, which I don't know if I would have said that in Iowa in the last few years, at least.
Yeah. I wouldn't guess. Yeah. But it is for us. It'll be, I always look at it as it's a good time to buy, right? Anytime it's softened, what's Warren Buffett's always, he's always buying when the stock market's down, right? Mm-hmm. So if we have a little down run here, I won't be buying just because I probably can't afford to at this point, but I don't know. There's going to be a ton of ground that will change hands though. And I think it's going to give opportunity to our residents to maybe get in at a cheaper rate, so I think everyone's seeing the value of access more and more to ground, and it's been locked up by a lot of non-residents for a while. So I think it'll be a good thing all in all. But
Seth,
time will tell.
When you were getting into these properties and buying it, and then looking at that cash rent, I mean, do you guys have in your mind with a particular piece of property what kind of income you're trying to target to produce so that, essentially your mortgages are getting paid? Is that what it is? Is like, hey, if mortgages and property taxes are paid, like we're in the good, or is it something else?
Well, when we first started, we were getting a 5% rate of return on our income on our land.
Wow.
Now, if you're going to buy something, you're going to be lucky to get 2.5, maybe 2.2%, if you're lucky.
Because of prices and interest rate?
Interest rates, prices, I mean, basically those two things.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, basically those two things. Yeah. So the income doesn't go up that much, right? And the prices go up. So it's just always going to be, I remember getting our first two, we were getting 5.25%, so that was way better than the bank, and you're borrowing it at 3.1%. So you were a net positive 2%, basically, the way we always looked at it. So
yeah.
Which it's unheard of now, but.
Right. Well, and that's where it's like, you talk about a softening market and, obviously even with the economy and where things are at, people aren't really very tolerant of risk. But, if you're a non-resident and you're sitting on money or something, it's like, man, what if market prices soften in Iowa? Even as a non-resident, I know that loophole's closed, but I buy a piece of ground in Iowa. I have good rentable ground for cash rent to make some income. It only takes, and maybe I say this the wrong way, it only takes one bad rule to get passed in the state of Iowa that's going to blow land through the roof, and that could be landowner tags even for non-residents for certain acreage, like Kansas or something. So it's like, where's your risk tolerance, essentially? Like, maybe you don't have that loophole that you had every year, but at the same time, it's like, man, if something hits and gets passed in the next 5 years, if you bought at $5,500 an acre, you might be sitting at 7 or 8 an acre when that hits.
Yeah. I would think about that twice. Some people may want to keep their ground, and if you want to get a higher rate of return, maybe they won't be able to hunt it every year because they've been closing the loopholes, but maybe you're going to do a cash lease, do a hunting lease on that. And now you're talking about adding cash flow into your operation. And yeah, it helps you buy time to actually sell that land. Right.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I think, was it 2 years ago, 2022, there was legislation that was talking about opening up, if you're a landowner or non-resident landowner in Iowa, that you were going to be able to draw one buck tag a year. And if you're a landowner, and that got shot down, or I don't even know if they voted on it. It got caught up in committee somewhere, but I remember like being very torn between that because we had just put our land together, and I'm like, that would be awesome because we would make a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
But that would totally suck because our deer herd's going to suck.
Oh, it would destroy it.
It's just, it would destroy it.
Yeah. It wouldn't be the Iowa that we all know today. But that's, when you look at that from a capitalist standpoint, I mean, that, something like that definitely makes a giant change in the short term to land prices. In the long term, it'll come back down because the herd eventually will not be as desirable.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was torn about that one. I didn't know what to think. I know what I thought. I didn't want it to happen.
Yeah.
I did know what I thought, but there was a silver lining. If it did happen, it was like, all right, well, I guess our land's gonna be worth a shitload.
Yeah, exactly.
But happy it didn't happen though. Definitely.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, seeing obviously this non-resident loophole get closed, like if anything, you guys are pushing the other way than you are getting to the more liberal side of things. So, right. I think that's a good point.
I do think that they're going to do something with like putting those landowner tags back into the non-resident pool. I just sense that that's kind of coming.
Yeah.
I think by tying this up on the non-resident, on
the
party hunting situation, I think they're also acknowledging that like, they have all these tags allotted to landowners that aren't getting used.
I also think that they're going to lose non-resident license revenue. Because even with guys buying general hunting tags and doe tags, like now they're just putting in for points.
Sure.
So you're gonna lose non-resident license revenue.
Right.
Do resident landowners have to buy a license in Iowa?
Yes.
You do?
Yep.
Okay. So it's not like Ohio where they can just basically hunt for free.
No, you have to register with your parcel, and you have to have, so you can't even, you have to have CRP on your ground, or you have to be in active farming.
Oh, wow.
If you're cash renting and you have no CRP, you cannot get, unless they change that rule. They might have changed that rule.
You can't get a landowner tag, you're saying?
You can't get a landowner tag. You have to be actively farming. And they consider owning ground with CRP or actually farming it yourself.
Wow.
So,
yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it will be interesting because ultimately funding, especially from license sales, is key for the DNR. Yeah, I mean, that would be the overnight game changer for land prices and then eventually the downturn of the herd if they would allow that happening.
Yeah, and I don't think it will anymore at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, not in the short term anyways. It might longer term, but We'll see. Once I think they're trying to get a better wrap on things, and there'll probably be changes coming up. It seems like
always is
every year.
it's inevitable. So
yeah. Well, let's. You got anything else? I was going to switch on the
commodity. Let's go to commodities.
Yeah, let's. So Seth, I guess just explain the basics of commodity to us and our listeners, because that's the hard part for us. Is like when you talk about commodities, like what essentially are some examples that are in that pot, and then essentially we'll get into like the market aspect of it, I guess.
Sure. So I mean, commodities are basically they're most commonly known in the Midwest. The commodity can be anything. It's used in just different business trade, right? So corn, soybeans, wheat, cattle, hogs, oil's a commodity. I mean, money is traded on the commodities exchange as well. So natural gas, I mean, orange juice, there's just cotton. I mean, there's a ton of them. Silver, gold. I mean, there's just, there's a ton of things that are involved in the commodity world. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of different things that are traded anyways. And there are things that aren't traded as well, but,
so from your side though, in the Midwest, it's basically around farming commodities specifically.
Yeah. So in our neck of the woods, most of the commodities are going to be your grains. So it's going to be corn, soybeans, wheat. So those commodities are traded on the Chicago or the CME. So yeah, I got to be careful what I say here for some regulation things, but basically what happens is a long time ago, they try to get more efficient markets, right? So if someone would house everything, without going into too much detail, I guess, because I could go on for a really long time about this. Basically, to try to gain markets, we made it centralized, basically, where a lot of bushels and stuff come in, and elevators will send, buy. Yeah, it's hard to explain without going into too much detail. I'll be on here for hours explaining this.
Can you start with some of the Can you start with some of the restriction stuff? Like, I know you even originally, like, leading up to this podcast, you're like, there's a lot of, like, I want to make sure I'm okay to say certain things and this and that. I mean, can you share with us what's so tightly restricted about this business that you're having to be careful about?
People taking what I say as my trade, like as trade advice.
Yep.
So if I start talking about the car market, I can give you an opinion, but all my opinions have to be, I can say my opinions on things, but if I talk about the markets and I don't say something properly, if I forget to say, in my opinion, I think this market is going to do X.
Yeah.
That's considered giving market advice. And
okay. Well, let's be clear out of it. Let's be clear out of the gate then to any listeners. You're not giving any commodity advice. We'll just be clear to all of our listeners here.
No, I'm
purely opinions. Purely opinions from
Would
this
that
point
be
forward.
like stock market too? Like if we had somebody on Wall Street on here and they're like, "Hey, let me give you some advice on this," like they can't.
Depending on which license they have, it'd be the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm a little cagey about talking about that because one slip up and the fines are pretty large. So
Interesting.
I don't want to slip up and say the wrong thing. But so you can look at a commodity two different ways. So if you're going to sell your corn, you're going to sell it to the local elevator, right?
Yep.
And so that local elevator is then going to either use that corn probably to feed, or they're going to sell it to a different elevator, or they're going to some larger company that's going to want to export it, right? So they'll rail it down to, from the Midwest, they'll put it on trains or barges and get it down to Louisiana, and they'll put it on a boat there and ship it to whoever bought it, right? So for simplicity's sake, a long time ago, basically, a lot of these larger companies, like in Chicago, like there'll be huge companies where these huge elevators are basically co-ops, different companies will collect and buy and sell a lot of corn from a lot of different places, right?
Yep.
And so to make that easier too, instead of everyone having to contact them, they started like a board of trade, basically, where we know X amount of bushels are out here being traded. We want to sell them. We want to buy them. So we just come together here. May not be what you get for them cash price at the elevator, but it's just adding liquidity to the market, right? It's like, it'd be like equivalent to having everyone's 401k all going into the stock market, but it's all done through your individual business level. It's then that business then invests into, whomever your broker, your advisor is, and that advisor might be with Charles Schwab or Edward Jones or whomever, and then that goes into a larger. So it's no really different than that. It's just it's just labeled differently, right? So
who would be your, who would be your like typical buyers? Like, is it businesses and companies who need, let's say in the case of corn, like they're actually on the commodity market buying like, hey, we need X tons of corn, or is it, other people in the market, like somewhat like the stock market, to where they're just trading back and forth type stuff?
Yeah, so they're trading back and forth basically like the stock market. They're all tied, there's some probably leverage. I don't know the current ratio right now, but yeah, it's usually backed up by bushels of corn somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like,
it's not like gold. It's not like the gold standard was. I mean, there's probably some leverage there,
Gotcha.
So,
okay. So that makes sense. And so, essentially that market is, so, I know a lot of times when we're driving in Iowa or Kansas or whatever, I don't know, I'll go through a local channel, like I'll hear them talk about hog prices and that's the commodity market being talked about on the radio and announcing the prices, mainly so the local farmers know what they kind of have.
That's correct. Yes.
Got it.
So now every year, and it's always changing, right? So, depending on how much inventory we carry out in a year, by inventory, I just mean like how many worldwide bushels of corn are there around? And that number is always kept track of. And how much are we going to produce? How many acres of corn are there going to be this year? What's our yield going to be? And well, that's changes so much, right? You guys are drying up out east, on the eastern grain belt too, where it's just pouring here right now, so you're going to tell me like, what's our yield going to be this year? I don't know,
Yeah.
And so that's where they get price change. Right. And the same thing in the livestock, if there's a ton of cows out there right now and, or not cows, right? We'd love a ton of cows right now. Cows are the breeding stock anyways, but depending on the inventory level, right? We have pretty low supplies of beef right now.
And so it seems like that's been one that's been for a while. Like, I don't know. I mean, again, just trying to follow loosely around it. Like you hear like beef prices are, up. Right. So I guess are just like you're going to sell your grain to the local elevator, what about from like a cattle standpoint? Like what are those cattle farmers doing on a local level to enter this market?
Sure. So like at a local level, like if you're, if I own some cows right now and they're for slaughter, they're not for breeding, and I'm not looking to sell to a feedlot. I'm looking for an end game. We'd be selling to like a Tyson or Tyson's one that's in our area. Omaha, greater Omaha area beef is, there's a couple different packing houses that you're selling to, right?
Yep.
So, and that's a cash price, right? So, and that's their cash price on your delivery date. That's probably been negotiated already. So that has really not much to do. That has something to do with what I do. But that's, it's a little bit separate too. So,
so like if I'm a farmer and I've got 100 head of cattle that I'm ready to take to slaughter, do I work with somebody like you to get those to market, or how did those head get onto market to where I'm making cash price off of them?
Sure. Most of the packing houses have people that are out looking and buying cattle. Right?
Okay.
They have cattle buyers, right? So I know a few cattle buyers and I know quite a few farmers. So a lot of times I might connect them if I see them, or he's like, hey, I'm looking for X amount of head, and I might just let a few people know, but that's not my normal job. That's just more of just
network type
stuff.
Not
what I normally do. That's more just networking. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So mostly what, like in my world, what we're doing, and basically what I'm basically doing is it doesn't matter what type of commodity, if it's grains, if it's livestock. What we're trying to do is figure out, all right, what's your break even on this? Your rent, for the grain side, what's your rents? We're figuring out rents. We're just trying to figure out your total cost. Then where the market's at, how much do you want to make? What do you need to make on your farming operation?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need to make to live? What do you need to make for your land payments? What do you need to make for, and most people know that. If not, I'll sit down and talk to them, walk them through it, and try to figure out just kind of a budget. And then from that point, we'll try to figure out, maybe a marketing plan of some way, shape, or form.
For them specifically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Same thing on the livestock side is, on the livestock side, the same thing. We're just trying to figure out your break evens basically. And what are you trying to make off your, we need to make a profit on these if we can, hopefully. And what do you need for your farm,
Got it.
So
interesting.
What does marketing a commodity look like, beyond connecting it to the market? You know what I mean? Is it basically like a registry, or what kind of like actually marketing goes into that?
Yeah. So basically, yes, it's basically helping people sell, and selling it. I mean, we try to sell at the right time, right? Which is the $1 million question, right? That's why people struggle with it. So this is where I kind of have to step around a few questions here a little bit, but just knowing probably the, how do I say this correctly?
Yeah, or just use a hypothetical, Seth. So if I'm a farmer, I would be a client of yours, right? And I say I got corn and soybeans. I got 1,000 acres of corn. I got 1,000 acres of soybean, which I'm sure is a lot. I assume. And I say, hey, I need you to help me market this and bring it to market. What would be
my profit?
What would be kind of the process that you would walk us through?
Yeah, so in that case, we'd probably, the first thing we do is sit down and figure out what your cost of production is, right?
Okay.
So what does it cost per acre for you to produce this, and try to estimate what your yield's going to be. And if you got X amount of yield, a lot of farmers have history. They know what their yields are going to be,
right?
And we can track rainfalls. We can pretty well track.
Okay. What would be some examples of numbers there? So what would be an average? Cost per acre, and what would we expect from yield?
Well, cost per acre changes every year.
Okay.
Yeah, I can think of lots of different numbers. I know on our for us this year, I think our total cost per acre was on corn this year was, gosh, what was it? I don't remember now. 600 and. I can tell you last year's was $675 an acre on
to
last year.
establish.
That was our cost.
All right, so I'm $675,000 into my corn crop.
That's just $675 an acre into your corn crop. Yep, that's just what. And then last year we had, so if we probably on our farmland across the whole thing, I budget pretty low on that. So I budget like $150 an acre, or 150 bushels an acre on that. So last year we had some price swings, so at 150 times, $5.50 for corn, we'd be at $825 an acre.
So you're netting $150.
Yeah.
So on 1,000 acres, I'm profiting $150,000.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So there we go. Now I got my profit.
Now you got your profit. Now you can go buy more farmland.
Yeah.
Well, so what's the process from? So we've worked through that. I now understand. Okay, this is what I would hope to make. How are we going to take it to market to get it sold?
Yep. So what's going to happen is we're going to sit down and at that point we know that information. So now we're going to try to hopefully improve on that a little bit, right? Because more than likely, when you sell to an elevator, there's what's called basis, right? So basis is basically the cost to insure. I mean, there's the cost to insure shipping for the elevator, right? So they have the cost of storage, right? So they have a cost to it. So, and a lot of, like in our area down in southern Iowa, we're about 30 cents under the board for basis, right? So whatever the Chicago Board of Trade is going to be, we're very generically about 30 cents under. So we're going to try to improve on the basis, right? And that's
Okay.
what we're going to try to improve if possible.
Gotcha.
And that's where we get into like what time of year we have a better basis, right? A lot of times historically at the elevators, a lot of times we'll have better basis in the late winter, early spring timeframe, depending on their needs as an elevator. But so if we have the ability to, we will try to market a lot of the grain that time of year. But if you just watch the basis, the elevators put out it every day. So I mean,
Yeah.
if so you may have home storage, right? So I may call you and say, hey, you have X amount of bushels that you've stored at your home place. We're at a positive 15 basis right now because they really need corn, so they're going to sweeten the pot, right? So it's just about paying attention to like the market price basis, and then acting on it basically.
So in an act situation like that, call me, I say, great, let's do it. Is it kind of like a stock market where like we call or we submit that deal and it's locked in, or is there like hey, it's not locked in until the elevator gets it type of thing?
No, it's locked in then. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we're going to call and sell, then we have to deliver. Yeah.
Got it.
So, or I may just call you and say, hey, what are you doing right now? Can you go? I mean, do you have time? We need to make some delivery here. We're going to sell some corn. Do you have time coming up here to make a delivery? So every elevator is usually a little bit different when they accept delivery too.
Do most of your farmers, are they okay with holding the crop that long? I mean, obviously the longer they hold it,
Right, it depends on their cash flow and their storage capacity.
I guess that's what I was getting at. Yeah.
And the market.
Yeah. So most of them, yes, are willing to, well, depending what area you're at. Our neck of the woods up here, it seems like there's a lot of home storage.
Yep.
Guys are willing to sit on it. I remember there was a guy, I don't know him, just heard a lot of rumor about it, but apparently he had sold about 8 years worth of crop in 1 year because he just kept waiting on it.
Wow.
Build storage. He just kept holding it, and then he dumped it all. And I don't know how much of that turned into a wives' tale or, but the people that I do work with, if they, we will keep it at home and we will store it. So
interesting. So it's very much like like a day trader, right? I mean, day traders in there, they're watching the numbers, they're trying to time, should I get out now? Should I hold it? I dropped, or I went up 30 more cents. Now I got to get out, whatever. I mean, it's down to that level, except with tangible goods that we're all familiar with, pork, beef, corn, wheat, soybean.
Well, so what is the range of commodities that you're in, Seth? Is it just pretty much exclusively ag, or how far outside of that will you go?
So for me personally, I mean, we more specialize in just ag, right? So I mean, for, doing corn, wheat, soybeans, hogs, cattle, I will I'm authorized to trade any futures markets, right? So, and some of my clients that like to gamble a little bit, we might trade some oil or natty gas or something if we had an opinion on the market. So,
interesting.
Okay. Gotcha. And so you're operating basically as a consultant, or I know I've heard you say you technically you're a broker.
That's correct. Yeah.
Be one in the same.
So commodity broker based. Sorry, I think my internet's being slow here.
That's okay. I guess I'm trying to draw a line, or if there is one, between as a broker or versus a consultant, or you are essentially one and the same.
Yeah, so I'm technically a broker, but it's one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
At the end of right, it's one and the same. Yeah.
Is it? I mean, is it? I don't know how to say. Is it a big business what you're doing? Like, obviously, we know the commodity side, and we think about all the farming and stuff, but it seems like there's still very tight knit operations around the community aspect. I guess it's where your step comes in to really broaden that horizon, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say there's so much information out there. A lot of what we do is just kind of funnel the right information to, we're just funneling the right information. And then from that information that we're given, we're just basically trying to help people sell when we think we should be selling, or I would say that's probably the biggest thing, is people just, they get so caught up, and a lot of farmers, to be honest with you, they're doing chores in the morning, they're doing so much during the day that they don't have time to pay attention to the markets. Where they may get 5 minutes, they're going to look at the market and they're going to be like, oh crap, it's down. Wish I would have sold yesterday, or sold it yesterday. I wish I would have held on to it. And that's just where a guy like me, we just pay more attention. I shouldn't say we pay more attention. We just have more free time to pay attention.
Right. I mean, that is the job. Yeah. Nick, maybe you have to cut this out if it's inappropriate, but do you get paid like a normal wealth management would, like on the money that's made or invested, or?
I assume it's commission, right? Commission on the sale of the
commodity?
I
get paid per commission. So
okay.
I get paid on commission. So by trade.
Got it. On trade. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Can we ask you what?
I don't get paid like a wealth advisor, no, where it's like 7 basis points or 1% of the total value of the account. No.
Gotcha. It's purely on the commission of the deal that happens. Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask what would be an average like commodities broker commission? Like whether you want to share what you make, or what would somebody expect to pay for a service like that?
I would think from everyone charges a little bit different, but I would say somewhere in that $70 range. So and that's a round trip. So that means buying and selling. So, and that would be generically round trip in there. So on the insurance side of things, that's all like set by the government, right?
Right. Yeah. You can't change that.
If you sell crop insurance or you sell RP insurance, that's all predetermined by the government. So,
but on the commodity side, it is a dollar amount as opposed, on a per trip basis, as opposed to like a percentage.
That's correct. Yeah. So if you're going to sell one contract of soybeans, that's 5,000 bushels. Okay. And so if I'm going to sell 5,000 bushels of soybeans on the Chicago Board of Trade for you, because we're going to market those, we think the price might be going down in the future. So we want to sell them, and that would be, for me to sell them, it would be $70 or whatever we've agreed to.
On a per bushel basis or just overall?
That's per contract, and contracts are 5,000 bushels.
Okay.
So
got it. Okay. That makes sense. So, I mean, obviously you're dealing with relatively large amounts of bushels coming through here in order to make money.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
So that's just if it's on the, if we're using the futures market for those, or if we're using a cash market and I'm helping you market your grains. So we have like my sweatshirt here says grain basis. It's our grain advisory service. So that's when I would help someone sell with cash, right? So I'm going to get a limited power of attorney for that. I'm going to actually sign off at all the elevators, and I'm going to be able to act on your behalf and sell your grain at your elevators for you for a fee.
Gotcha.
And that is per bushel. So we do about, for corn, we do 4 cents a bushel for corn, and I believe it's 5% right now, or 5 cents a bushel on soybeans. So
got it. Okay. So it does it. So you've got multiple touch points within the commodities market, essentially, depending on advising in some cases, sitting down, understanding what that is, the actual transaction to a local elevator, or on the market itself.
That's correct. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, and most of the local cash prices are tied back to the Chicago Board of Trade, right? Mm-hmm. So they're going to have their own basis. They're going to have their own fees that they're going to take out as well. So there might be times seasonally that certain seasons, times of year are better times to sell. And we really try to, and that's based off historical data for within the markets. And so I might recommend people like, all right, we're going to want to get some sold this time of year because the seasonal trend is coming in. Yep. So things like that. So
very cool.
Yeah. And so I assume
I really can't give a lot more details without giving my opinion. So
that makes sense.
I know it's hard to tiptoe around. I assume you're picking and choosing like the areas within this business that you're like either based on connections you have or just passions that you have. You're like, these are the areas that I want to deal in. That's up to you as the broker.
That's correct. Yeah. So in my accounting practice, I had a lot of my hog producers got out of the business years ago. So I had a lot of cattlemen, feedlots. So I started with some of my tax accounting clients because I had built a relationship already with them. And I work a lot with cattle right now, and then grain farmers too. And I have a few hog producers as well. But I would say between the grains and then the cattle is where I do most of my business in. So.
Awesome.
Seth, I'll ask you this. I'll leave you on this one. You know, I know your ag side of things is kind of where you're focusing, but you had mentioned oil and natural gas. You know, one thing Jared and I have run into a lot with farms is the solar side of things. Is that starting to come up more in discussions with farmers from solar and potentially that energy being a commodity, I guess?
You know, that's a good question. I would say out here, you don't hear about it that much, just for the simple fact that, you know, guys are set up to be ag farmers. They don't want to cut in any of their fields for putting up solar farms.
Yeah.
You see a few here or there. If there might be some junk acres, I would think so. But yeah, it's just something that's not very common here.
I would assume it's the ground fertility out there being so highly productive, whereas like we were talking about earlier, we might see cash rents in the $50 to $70 range out here.
Your highest and best use, and also proximity to development.
Yeah, metropolitan areas.
Right.
Well, cool, man. Well, we appreciate it, especially like that partnership side. I mean, that for sure is going to resonate with a lot of guys listening to this that, you know, probably can't do it on their own, and the only way that it's going to become a feasible thing, like with Jared and I, it's like you got to find the right partners to do it with.
Frankly, I think we would recommend it with a high degree of caution. Like, know who you're getting in business with. I mean, that is true no matter what. I would assume
Seth would say the same thing. I mean, you've got, you know, it's worked for you guys. I'm sure there's been trials and tribulations like any partnership, but it's worked.
Yep. It's worked and it will work, and at some point we'll just won't want it to work anymore and we'll sell up, you know?
Yeah.
So that's okay.
Very cool. Awesome, man. Well, Seth, we appreciate you coming on this afternoon and again, sharing some great knowledge with us on a bunch of topics that we don't know anything about. So it's good to be able to start to absorb that, man. And yeah.
Stick around here for just a little bit after we let you go.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, guys.
And done. Okay. Yeah. I mean,
dude, the world of commodities is like, man, it's over my head, frankly.
Well, that's what we were kind of talking there. Like, you know, when I hear those numbers, you know, and I think anybody, they're like, you know, 4 cents a bushel, 5 cents a bushel. Like, what the hell? But we're talking millions of bushels in cases. Like,
yeah, a lot of bushels out
there. So
it
adds up. But yeah, out of the gate, you're just, it's a lot to get your head wrapped around and understanding, like, you know, how these markets move. And really, I think it's all about network connections in that local area. But yeah, I mean, it's good. The partnership thing is huge because, I mean, that guy's proven, you know, to build over the course of 4 years, 1,000 acres in Iowa with essentially 3 partners. You know, it's worked, you know, and sure, I'm sure there's a dynamic just like any partnership, but you know, it can happen. And obviously having multiple people bring money to the table, you're going to be able to buy something bigger or more expensive.
Yeah. What I want to know is, Nick, if you consider yourself more of a cattleman or a hog producer.
With that mustache, I think we know the answer.
Well, I know who's producing the hog over here.
Yeah,
I guess hog producer.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Nick.
Okay.
I'm gonna say cattleman, but all right.
That's what I was thinking. So, anyways, we appreciate Seth coming on to I Bought a Farm, and we'll catch you all next time.
Later.
If you enjoyed listening to this episode of the I Bought a Farm podcast, make sure you check it out every other Thursday night on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and any other place that you might find your favorite podcast.